Well, good evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Deon Abrams. And on this evening's program, I have a special guest, a man who has been through some travails. I'm talking about none other than the former commissioner of the Guyana Lands and Surveys, Mr. Trevor Ben. I want to welcome you to Walter Rodney Groundings, Trevor.
Thank you very much, Deon. It's a pleasure being with you, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Now, where do I start? You have left the UNDP to join the APNUFC administration as Commissioner of Land and Surveys. What were you doing at the UNDP before you got? Just a background to us understanding that you didn't come into this system as a man scrunting for a job and all of these things.
So, let me first of all say, Deon, that I came from a family who considers service above self as our motto. My mother and father were community leaders. As a child, I accompanied my father on a number of activities, whether it is self-help activities, community meetings, community cleanups. So, and from there I grew into being involved in youth work. I serve in many civil society organizations, especially youth organizations, where I headed up many of them, both locally, regionally, and internationally. I've traveled the length and breadth of this world before I joined the United Nations. And of course, you would know that even before I joined the United Nations, I worked with the government of Guyana at the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, at that time the Lands and Surveys Department, where I served as a land development officer. And then I moved on to be the assistant and then deputy regional executive officer for Region 4. And in 2004, I joined the staff at the United Nations Development Program. I had roughly from 2004 to 2016, when I joined the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission. It's interesting though, at the UN, where I serve not only here in Guyana, but I had detailed assignments in Afghanistan, in South Sudan, and in Sierra Leone. I've been to other countries for short periods and for meetings and so on, traveled the world extensively. But during that period, I served as the focal point for governance and poverty alleviation. Okay. So all the programs at the United Nations Development Program that revolve around poverty reduction or good governance, whether it's elections, whether it is the community groups, working with community groups, working with Amerindian communities, etc. That's the kind of work that I would have been associated with at the United Nations Development Program.
Okay, so I remember some of those youth organizations, Guyana and the Region 4 Youth Development.
EMILEC.
Right, and all of these things. I know we go back a long way. But you, what motivated you to leave? You said you grew up in service, but somehow the motivation to leave an institution like the UNDP to come to a government agency seems somewhat, I don't know, how do you describe your motivation to take that step?
Deon, it was a tough decision. In fact, my wife advised me against it when I was doing it. Eventually, she allowed me to carry on because after I was approached and to apply, And when I did not apply initially, I did eventually apply, but when I didn't apply initially, the president at the time wrote the resident representative at the United Nations Development Program and asked if I could be seconded. And she said that she wasn't prepared to release me at that time. And well, I got a few calls after that asking if I was really interested and so on and so. Eventually, I decided to apply, and I resigned from because the president spoke to me about what he had in mind, the vision he had for the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, and what help he would like to bring it to what you would like to see it. And I thought it fell in line with what I would like to see myself, having regard that I worked there before. Interestingly, when I worked there previously, I used to be responsible for the Lands and Surveys office at Korokororo. That office had responsibility from Gardner Veedon all the way to Moblisso. I also served in short period in Blackbush and Virginujan, but I spent most of my time at the Korokororo office. At the Korokororo office, I was still very involved in youth work, and one day we had, I think it was in 1996 or 1997, we had the World Youth Day, August World Youth Day event, and there was a workshop that was held, a symposium, at which the Minister of Youth at the time spoke, and at the end of the session, when there was question and answer, I got up and asked him a few hard questions, and we had a back and forth about the questions I asked him. That the minister at the time was Henry Jeffrey. We joke about it all the time now when we see each other. But we had a back and forth, and I don't think it went down very well with the powers that be at the time. And my boss at the time, Mr. A.K. Datadin, he was Commissioner of Lands and Surveys. He called me on the phone. He said, "Boy, I hear you went on radio and you cuss out a minister. How you gonna do that?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, Commissioner. This is what actually happened." But eventually, the commissioner told me that he was transferring me with immediate effect. And I said, I was living on the highway. The office is on the highway that I was responsible for. How could you transfer me with immediate effect? I said, I can't do that. I need time. And he said, if you don't come, then I have to send you on leave. And he did. He sent me on leave. And by the time I come back from leave, the office was closed at Korokororo. They removed all of the furniture from the office and all of the files and materials from the office and took it to Georgetown. And so all the staff from that office had to report to Georgetown. And from
that was under the PPP?
Under the PPP regime. In fact, for me, it was a blessing in disguise, because on that occasion, I was placed in an office for 3 years with nothing to do and a whole day to do it. 3 years at the Lands and Surveys Department. So I used that time to learn the system at Lands and Surveys. So it was easy for me when I went back. Not only many of the personalities remained the same, some of the people you left there over 12 years remained there in the same positions, and some of the systems they had there hadn't changed. So it was easy for me to fall back in and understand what was going on there.
Okay.
And when I was offered the position, I felt I was ready to take on the challenge.
But you talk about the systems at the Lands and Surveys. When you got back there, while you were there, under that 3 years, whatever we want to call it, and then your subsequent position as Commissioner of Lands and Surveys, how effective were these systems that you are talking about in terms of delivering to the people what the Lands and Surveys should have been delivering to them?
So we used to joke that Lands and Surveys is among the top 3 most corrupt government agencies.
Okay.
When I got there, people complained bitterly about the length of time it took them to even file an application. You know, the system was not automated. In fact, we had about 5 working computers when I got there,
Okay.
with an office of over 100 persons. We had just over 5 computers. There were no working emails. Some people had emails, but they never used it. And there was no database that you could rely on to say that this is the
Land
extent
database.
of the land database that we have. So, but worse is that we had no money. When I got there, we were in the red of over $200 million. We couldn't pay salaries properly, and that's one of the things that the president asked me to focus on when I get there, to make sure that I could reverse the trend of the money loss. And so we thought about, since I got there was a revenue base, annual revenue base of about $300 million, which we collected. And I moved that within 3 years from 300 million to $1.2 billion. We stopped the hemorrhaging right away. Salaries were increased triple-fold. I believe when I left there, Lands and Surveys had one of the highest salaries of any public sector agency in the country, and we renovated the main buildings across the country. We built 2 new ones in Berbice, New Amsterdam, and Region 3. And we rehabilitated the transportation fleet. Completely new vehicles. When we got there, some of the vehicles were 20 years old and so on, and they, were costing us more to maintain than to. So we ended up selling some of those and buying new vehicles and so on. We started work with the University of Twente out of the Netherlands to build a database to help us to know how much land we have, where the land is located, who has it, how much they're paying, so that at your fingertip, this information could be made available. We purchased a number of computers, over 200 of them, and computerized a lot of the work that we were doing. For example, we were issuing handwritten receipts. That had lots of issues. Up to when I left there, some regions didn't get online because of internet issues, and they were still issuing handwritten receipts. And we had a case of where people writing over receipts, and in one case, one guy over $1 million. Just before I left, we found him that he had removed from the system. But we computerized we have an electronic billing system now, so that anyone who go to Lands and Surveys will receive an electronic bill. But there was a lot of pushback. A lot of the staff who grew accustomed over the years to what they used to say, getting a little freck, a little kickback, it was becoming more and more difficult for them to do that, because I had an open door policy. People were able to come and complain, and once they complained, we took action, and so on. So a lot of them were annoyed. Some of them were dismissed for dishonesty, and although I see recently, at least in one case where we dismissed someone for dishonesty, it was found, an investigation was done. All of the evidence showed that he forged receipts that from advances that he was given, and he was sent off. Our human resource policy there is not to re-employ anybody, but I saw he's back there in a very senior position. We set up internal audit section. We used to have one when I got there, but it never functioned, and we brought on qualified staff, very robust qualified staff, who did a lot of work in bringing our internal audit systems up to scratch. But I understand they let the person go and they gone right back to what we used to have before. So it's a lot of work we did. We tried to stop the hemorrhaging of our financing. We tried to make it less difficult for members of the public who want to apply for land to be able to apply. And we tried to improve our information system so that we know what is available at any time. So when people come, they don't have to wait too long. One of the last things that I was working on when I left there was the remapping of the country. For more than 50 years, we haven't remapped this country. Deon, Guyana is way behind every other Caribbean country in dealing with land issues. When it comes to database, to understand where the land is, who owns the land, etc., we used to be ahead. Up to around 2001, we used to be ahead. And it's a flip. In fact, a lot of our staff used to be hired out in the Caribbean, whether it's the BVI or Turks and Caicos or Trinidad or Bahamas. They used to be well sought after. Today, the quality of the staff employed by those governments, we don't have. For example, for you to become a surveyor, a certified surveyor in most of the Caribbean country, you have to have a degree in surveying, a minimum of a degree in surveying. Almost a great deal of our surveyors at the most senior levels, a great deal of them have only a
ordinary
technical diploma from the Government Technical Institute. That's something that I was working on, to start a degree program at the university, because you have to have qualified people with the ethics of the profession engage if we are going to move beyond the everyday problems that you face in lands in the country. People are complaining bitterly about the surveyors and how they conduct surveying work. They go into the field and they don't notify them. They go into the field and after not notifying them, they take out large chunks of one person's land and put it in the name of other people. All kinds of craziness we hear, complaints coming into us about. And so there's a lot of work to be done to improve, and we had started that process, the Lands and Surveys Department, to the extent that we got a lot of kudos from the Food and Agriculture Organization out of Italy, Rome. They invited us on a regular basis to speak to other countries to show them what we were doing in a short space of time, the progress that we were able to make. Okay. The World Bank started inviting us to their annual land management meetings to talk about the work that we have been doing, and so we had begun to get a lot of recognition for the work that we're doing. As you probably may have seen, at the UN level, the UNCCD, I was asked to chair the most important meeting of the UNCCD last year alongside President Modi, Prime Minister Modi of India. So I think we did a lot in the short space of time, under 3 years. We achieved a great deal, but it's not sustainable unless the efforts that we have put in work continues, and we are seeing evidence of that not happening. So it's a great pity.
No, I'm a bit surprised, that you have laid bare a situation at the Lands and Surveys Department that suggests that we were running an archaic system. I heard Dr. Van West Charles, talking about the Guyana Water Incorporated, and it's a similar kind of situation that he described. How is it that the government, after 23 years, that should have been making progress, seem to have been retrogressing, in terms of what was happening in these institutions rather than progressing? How could that, what was the framework for facilitating that kind of movement?
So it's not only 23 years, but it's 23 years plus 20 million pounds. We got monies from the European Union to upgrade the Lands and Surveys Department, and there was no evidence at the end of the 20 million pounds that serious work went into the Lands and Surveys Department. I believe that there are pockets of people at the government level as well at the lands and surveys level who do not want lands and surveys to become to be upgraded. Okay. With upgrade comes accountability. It comes transparency. You know, we used to hold half-yearly press conference because we wanted members of the public to know what we are doing. We start to bring everything electronic so that we can easily access it and people can come and see. And we wanted to be able to be in their homes and make an application. So the application should have been online, etc., etc. This thing where you have interaction with human beings, it can get very messy, and favoritism comes into play and all of that kind of thing. We were on the precipice of removing those things so that we don't have to know what you look like and what your name is to determine whether you get a land. You should have been able, by the time we were finished with all the different issues we were addressing, by the time we were finished, you should have been able to sit in your home and make an application. This is the case in many countries. Out in Suriname, for example, Suriname is way ahead of us when it comes to land management. You know, the average person does not understand what goes in the back room to get you a plot of land. It is not just, oh, we have land lying there that you go and get a piece. There's a lot of work, painstaking work that goes into making sure that you get the correct piece of land, lot 56, for example, and not lot 506, you know, so that there's no chaos where you get a document saying you're at 56, but you're living at 57. We have that happening. I came and met those issues. We're trying to resolve some of those, but there's a lot more work to be done. But you can only do that if you improve the database, if you map the land and you survey it properly, and you monitor the database, you know. And I have a feeling that some people don't want that to happen. If that happens, we will know who get 20,000 acres of land, for example. We would be easy to know who get 20,000 as against who get half acre.
Well, what did you find in terms of that 20,000 acres and all these things? Because we were like saying that the entire highway has been given away. That is the kind of feedback we got when the PPP was in government. How did you find the distribution of land at the lands and surveys when you got there?
So that's another misconception. People believe that we only have land on the highway.
Well, no, I mean
10 countries, 10 regions, and we have state land in all regions. For example, in Region 1, Matthews Ridge, when I got there, we got people living there for 30 years, longer maybe, that never had title for the land that they're living on. They got 3-story buildings on the land. So these are people who had to find the money on their own to build their mansions, and they're living there, but never had a document. I changed that. For many people in Matthews Ridge, it is the first time when I got there that they got title for the land. Same thing at Kokwani. But it is true that a lot of the land on the highway, most of the land that people really want, was given out. So those that have already been surveyed and so on, somebody has a title for it, but they may not be occupying it. So but there's ways of bringing back that into the system. It's a long-winded system, which we were working on as well. It's a long-winded system, but you could bring it back. The trouble is, because we did not have these databases to help us to understand and follow up. We were supposed to be able to sit in our offices and know that Lot 5 is owned by Deon Abrams and that he didn't pay land rent for 4 years. We should be able to do that. For the most part, when I got there, we weren't able to do that. And we were taking baby steps. For example, I initiated an IT department. We never had an IT department when I got there. There was an IT officer, but not a focus on IT to make sure that you have all the systems in place, you know. So that was new at the department, at the commission. Legal section. every piece of land, before it is issued, we have a legal section I introduce to review all the applications.
Conveyancing and everything?
Everything that is happening at Lands and Surveys, at some point before, it was late in my time there that it was introduced, but it was introduced nonetheless. We started a legal division whose responsibility it was to review every application before I signed off on it. So that was introduced. We introduced as I told you before, the internal audit, which they got rid of, and we introduced even the asset management. We didn't have an asset officer. So we don't know. When I got there the first week, I asked, how much vehicles do we have? I got 3 different numbers. How many vehicles do we have at Lands and Surveys? 3 different numbers in the first day I got. I had to demand that we, region by region, count the vehicles. There's a slew of issues that we have had to deal with, but I'm very proud of the accomplishments in the short space of time, because we reversed a bleeding organization, had no money, and we brought in lots of monies that we could pay our staff decent. We introduced a number of innovative programs to enhance the working situation for our staff. We introduced, I believe, the only government agency at the moment that has leave for men, what they call it.
Okay, but paternity leave.
Paternity leave.
Okay.
The only department. So it was a lot of progressive policies that we introduced for the betterment of our staff, but also for the betterment of the members of the community, of the members of the public who have interest in lands.
So tell me something. Many times people want work to be done in terms of surveying for conveyancing, and they contact surveyors privately. Does the Lands and Surveys Department offer that service too?
No, not for private conveyance.
Not for
with a caveat, we do not normally offer it. We do not, as an organization, do it. But my information is that many of our staff, who should not be doing public private practice without the permission of the commissioner or the minister, have been involved in it. So that's the short answer. But we don't. Our work is centered on state lands, surveying of state lands, to open it up for public use.
So all of this has happened, and when the government changed, there seemed to be a lot of venom in relation to Trevor Benn and the Lands and Surveys Department. You're painting a picture here that suggests that you went into the Badlands, the doldrums, and you brought bloom. So why is this kind of reaction from the PPP to Trevor Benn?
That's a question for the PPP. Deon.
No, I mean, speculate.
No, I can't speculate. I won't venture to speculate, but I would direct you to July 19, 2019. There was a press conference held, and since then, several press conferences after, my name was called, and statements were made, and promises were made about what would happen to me.
Okay.
In those press conferences. So I tell people I was prepared. Mm-hmm. I expected once the government changed that they would come after me. It did. They did, because they promised. But I was prepared. The moment the government changed, I inquired and I got advice about legal representation, and I had them on standby. Because I knew what this government was up to. I knew they were coming after me. I knew what they wanted to do to me, and I wanted to be prepared in the event that they did. And they did not disappoint.
But you mentioned that you were progressing towards a system where you didn't have to know who the applicant was. It suggests to me that, because one of the things that we hear, and I saw a comment on Facebook that Trevor Ben used to want to see Kuli people and so on, that he used to chase them out the office and that kind of thing. I mean, you and I went to school, we grew up together. Our friends are of all natures of people and so on.
Some of my best friends are Indian.
Right.
You
So
know.
I could not identify with that.
Yeah.
So
Deon, the truth is, I chased out an Indian businessman from my office who came to my office and offered me a bribe.
okay.
And I hollered on him and chased him out of my office.
Oh,
So if that is meaning I chased Indian people out of my office, I did. Because he offered me a bribe. $500,000. He came in with his hand in his pocket and he was fingering with his pocket. And at some point, the money fall out. He said, "Oh, shucks, man, take this for you and the boys." Go on. And I hollered on him and I chased him out of my office.
okay. So
It's a known big business person. And he complained to several people that I don't like Indian people and in techie money and whatever the case may be. But there are a slew of stories that different people I have spoken to know about people, senior people, both government and private sector, who would have liked to see my back, and for various reasons. And those stories are in the hands of the right people.
okay.
And at the right time, maybe we will talk about them. But there were people out there, I suspect, who by my actions did not compromise my job. I'm in court for three cases that they brought me to court for. I don't want to discuss the merits or demerits of the case, but one of them is for issuing a provisional lease for lands in an area which the government is saying that Lands and Surveys didn't own. That person paid the Lands and Surveys Department $27 million for that land. Now, I would have thought that's an administrative issue. If the land is not owned and the commissioner made a mistake, commissioner don't do these things on his own, by the way. There's a chain of people who have to deal with these issues. But let's assume that they are correct on whatever. If we didn't own the land, just give the man back the money. Why you have to drag Trevor Ben through the courts for receiving $27 million
That you didn't put in your pocket.
that is in the pocket of the government?
Okay.
You know, it's a provisional lease issue to the man. There are administrative ways of taking back that provisional lease and for reissuing the man his money and the baby party over. Similarly, a lease issued to another businessman who paid $100 million to the government. Trevor Ben didn't get that money in his pocket. But he's before the court because they said that the land was not Lands and Surveys land and I had no authority to lease the land, and so on and so forth. So, my lawyers are dealing with those issues. I don't want to get into the merits or demerits of the cases, but the public can see for themselves what's really happening and can form their own opinion.
But the issue of distribution of land, the other impression that we got is that you were issuing lands only to black people because the government's confronting of people are only of one racial nature. Was it a one-way street in terms of land distribution under your tenure as commissioner?
If that was not such a serious issue, it would have been laughable. Because we all know who are the people that significantly own lands and go after land in this country. The truth of the matter is that more than 50% of the land issued under my watch went to Indian people. More than 50%. And the evidence is there to prove. The evidence is there to prove. Because they're the ones who come to my office on a daily basis and make their demands. And once it's a just demand, it is dealt with.
So why haven't we heard any issue relating to any of these persons
That's another question for the government. That's another question. But the truth of the matter is, if they want to release the list of lands, and I had cost to give it to them, because when the government came in, they requested it, the list of all lands issued by region, by amount, by name. I issued a list to the government. That list was requested of me by Christopher Ram when he came to do a audit of the office, and Mr. Hines, what Hines is his name, the accountant? Nigel Hines. Christopher Ram and Nigel Hines were assigned to lands and surveys. In fact, when they completed their work, they told me personally that lands and surveys was among the top 3 agencies, government agencies, that they reviewed so far, based on the information supplied to them. That's what both of them told me.
I'm tempted to tell you that you're lying.
No, you can't, because it is the truth. In fact, one of them, when I was taken to court, asked me, Trevor, this is stupidness. This shouldn't happen. One of them called me. In fact, both of them called me, but one of them offered to write about this issue. And I told them no. So they have the record. Both Hines and Christopher Ram have the records of the list of land that was issued in my time.
So, by seeking out the owner of Caracare and the other gentleman, are you saying that this is a kind of vendetta? Can we say it's some kind of vendetta that they just wanted Trevor Ben, and they were out to get him?
So Deon, I'm just prepared to state the facts of what happened, what transpired. I don't know what is the motive. I'm leaving it up to the members of the public to form their own opinion. But I'm not going to venture a guess as to what is motivating what is happening to me. All I'm saying is that
these are
the facts of what transpired while I was at Lands and Surveyors. There are a list of other issues with regard to infractions by whether it's business people in the way they dealt with land issues that I could bring to the fore. I'm not interested in doing that at the moment, but I know that information is in the hands of a number of people about what has transpired during my time, and there is enough motivation out there to treat me the way I'm being treated for obvious reasons.
All right, so you are one of many targeted by the administration. Would you venture to, you seem not to want to speculate, but there must be some psychology behind the way the PPP is treating with perceived African leaders. Do you have a take on that at all?
No, I've said before, Deon, that I believe that because I'm black, I'm being treated away. I've said that openly before, so it's no secret. I've said that I'm being targeted because I'm black. So there's no harm in saying that again. But beyond that, I think that the government's posture is to remove from the well, for the want of a better term, from the society, anybody that can pose a challenge to them, whether you're black or otherwise. That's their posture. They are in this government at this point in time to maintain their control and predominance in this country. They want to make sure that they never lost power again, and the important thing for them is to make sure that you do not have anybody out there who could put up a challenge to them. That's what. So dirty their character, make them unsellable, you know, and that's what they're doing.
But the government before, prior to 2015, was characterized as a narco state, and corruption was the hallmark of the PPP of that time. You have, in your discourse, suggested that you erased a number of avenues for corruption in the Lands and Surveys Department. Do you get a sense that, one of the driving forces behind removal of people who might have been bringing positive change to agencies is to have this corruption ferment itself again and begin to produce the alcohol that was basically there prior to 2015?
Deon, maybe you could assume that because of the choice of some of the people that have been replacing the people that have been removed. So people can come up with that view easily. I can't challenge that view that if anyone has it, because when you look at some of the characters who have been put in place, look what had happened at Guyana shortly after they made the changes there, for example. And we are hearing about so many different things going on at the moment, that nobody is being taken before the courts, nobody is being fired,
The police has to do its work. That's what they were being told.
Yeah, in my case, I was dragged into the police CID under the charge. The first charge, they said, was receiving money under false pretense. And I spent 2 nights in the Brigham lockup for that charge. And then on the third day, after there was huge protests in front of the Brigham police station, I was taken to court the following day, and the charge changed mere minutes, between 3 to 5 minutes before I went up the chute and cuff and so on, to misconduct in public office. So what I spent 2 nights in jail for
wasn't what you were charged with.
Wasn't what I was charged for.
But you received another charge only recently, another misconduct.
Well, I got 3 misconduct charges, one in March, one in April, and one in May. All relating to lands. As I described earlier, the one issuing the lease, two of them in relation to issuing a lease, and one of them in terms of selling a portion of land in the South Triangle area.
Now, I said I listened to Dr. Van West Charles in his description of what was happening at Guyana. And in discussion with people at Guyana, they're saying that the nature of the organization was one that allowed for corruption, that allowed for kickbacks, that many of the contractors that people who were knocked off, had become permanent staff, were relieved, and the old way of giving contracts to people so that you can get a money coming in and so on is what is really happening. And even some of the positions for which black people were fired, they've advertised again for those, and they're replacing those people with other people of other ethnicity in the organization. You were saying that at Lands and Surveys that questionable individuals are also being rehired in these organizations. I know even at Gaisuku, people who have had a record of performance were fired from the positions of estate managers and so on, and people 80 years and over and all these things have been rehired to manage estates and that kind of thing. And of course, the people who are brought back are not of the same ethnicity as those who have been fired. So when you refuse to speculate about the racist nature of the administration, I will confront that and say it's basically a vendetta against black people in the country, and particularly black people who seem to be making inroads and are causing the PPP to be embarrassed from the work that they have been doing. Because when you say that you have been given recognition by all these international agencies, and they have been there for 23 years, and it tells that, what was happening then as against what was happening under your watch. And so it is kind of putting to shame for them, and that too can bring some kind of feelings.
Yeah. It's easy to come to that conclusion, Deon. It's very easy. I agree with you. As I tell my friends, I like to look at the glass half full. I don't want to dwell on the negatives. I want to find ways to utilize my time for the betterment of my people. And I'm not going to focus on the negatives of this government. The way you fight the negatives of this government is by creating positives in our community. And that's what I'm trying to do now at the credit union.
I want us, because we only have, we're going to be done here just now, but the credit union is another matter. We got to talk about that another hour. I'm hoping that you can come back possibly next week and let us have a discussion on the credit union issue, because that too is a focus that I don't think we can deal with in 5 minutes or half an hour and so on. But the challenge that we face, I mean, you were saying that you don't want to focus on the negatives, but we should focus on the positives. But shouldn't these negatives motivate us to challenge?
Yeah, of course, we must know what our challenges are. We must understand them, and we must find ways to work around them. That's what I'm saying, essentially.
But what about confronting them?
Well, of course, that's what the politicians do. I'm not a politician. I would leave that for the politicians. The politicians need to confront. For me, it's about creating wealth for our people. And in doing so, you have to work with whoever's in the government at some point. So always having a confrontational approach don't always work if you're going to create wealth for your people, because they're going to put stumbling block all the time. I expect my party, whoever it is, to do the confronting on my behalf, but allow me to do the work that can bridge the divide and to bring about changes for the betterment of my people.
Okay.
So some of us have a different roles, in organizations. That's you have some people who are responsible for implementation, some people are responsible for policy, some people are responsible for finance, etc. Division of labor. And I think the sooner as a people we understand that in Guyana, that not everybody got to shout, or go out there and shout and cuss out. We got people who we must support to do that. Give them the support, give them the voice, give them the space to be able to do that. There are other people who could come up with creative ways of helping those people, support them as well. So I think that's the framework that we have to develop as a people that we are missing, because everybody wants to be part of the cussing out, and it's not helping us in the process. I have come to realize that even the worst individual is or her own soft spot. We got to find it. We got to find it. And deal with that individual once they have power.
But I want to ask you a question, because when you left the lands and surveys, there would have been applications there for lands that would have been already begun to be processed. What is your feedback in relation to the current government's response to those applications?
People are calling me regularly to tell me that they went into the department, and every time they mention my name, it's a problem for them. People don't want to hear my name, and if they see my name appear on their file, I make a comment or anything on the file, they're asking them why I didn't give them the lease, what they're coming to them for now, and things like that. Two or three people contacted me not so long ago about being demanded in order to process. One of the things I stopped when I was there, I believe it was not only racist, but it was counterproductive, for the want of a better word. We were asking people to submit project document to develop certain acreages. We had no system in place to evaluate the project document to see if it made sense. We didn't have a department that does that, but we asking people to submit a project document. So I could write anything and give to you. So I stopped it. And for you to do it, by the way, it comes at a cost, because if you can't do it, you gotta go and pay somebody to do it. So I understand from 3 people recently that they were told that they got to get this project document. It's back on the cards. And that the officer in charge sending them, the officer that they spoke to, sending them to a particular individual
to have it done.
That is calling $200,000 to do the project. These are ordinary poor people who can't afford it. Even the application ain't cost that amount of money. When you full application, don't cost that amount of money. But to develop the project document that will be accepted, and you know what? If that person don't fulfill the request to go to that individual to get it done, the application is disappear. They're given the royal runaround. So people are calling, a lot of people who had application in there, they said that there's a review going on about all of the cases that I dealt with, and so they have to come back and they have to come back. So that's what's going on, and nobody, it's a tough situation, but I think people have to stand up. Every Guyanese have a right. This is what President Granger had said to me, that he believes that every Guyanese must get a piece of land, and not just a piece of land, something to build a house and to do a kitchen garden. This 40 by 80 and 50 by 100 and that kind of thing can't work.
For the population?
For the population that we have, and if you're going to make something of yourself as an individual, you know, especially what COVID has taught us now, that each of us should have our own little kitchen garden. And that's what President Granger had said to me. Make sure that when we issue in land, people have enough to build a house and do a little bit of farming, if they choose to. But not these square thing that we're giving people to build a house, and when you build it,
you could spit in your
neighbor kitchen. You know? So that's where we were heading, and that's why in the case of Mocha, for example, we open up some areas there and we give people 1 acre lots. In each 300 and something lots we open up, and we give each person an acre, so that they can use that to do, you know, whatever farming plus living and so on. And that's what we were hoping to do in other areas as we open up lands. But all is not lost. I think if the people of this country make the demands on the Lands and Surveys Department, the record is there to show where we were going, what the work that we've done. We had several press conferences so the people know what we were doing. We spoke about it in public and at length, and the records are there. Demand the records, find out what is being done and why isn't this being pursued and so on. So those are the kind of things that people need to do, rather than hitting up on your leaders and politics and so on. Demand the government agencies to operate differently, to serve you better, because we now have something to judge by. This is what we came from, and this is what you're doing, and make your demands. This is what we should be doing as a people now, in every agency.
But if you say, I mean, the culture of the agency was one that was not amenable to change, you went there and you tried to make that change, but you obviously, you said you had resistance from a number of
well, I won't say it's the agency, the culture of the agency, the culture of some people in the agency. Some people in the agency. A lot of the people really supported me and worked to implement a number of the changes. But like I said, there were pockets of resistance. For example, I remember when we renovated the building at the main office and brought in cubicles, and you had a whole, everybody got an office, a box, so nobody can see you. And if you happen to get past and get into them, you see them sit down eating palori or something, and they're watching something on the phone or whatever the case may be. So I opened up the old building so that as soon as you come up the step, you could see everybody and know what they're doing, and make your demands and clean up the office and so on. When I did that, some people complained. They said that, by the way, the office was really dirty. We have photographs to show what the building was like when I took over and what it is today. People said they prefer when the building was dirty.
Okay.
Some of the staff, they felt better when the building was dirty and was enclosed and locked up and so on and so forth. So there were pockets of resistance, but for the most part, people were really happy with what we were doing and cooperated, supported. By the way, we brought in a really good bunch of solid young people, and there were some there already that we worked with that really was working with us to transform that organization. It's a great pity because a lot of them not there anymore. They were either sent off or they choose to leave because of the environment not conducive to what they. So
how does that? I mean, I heard one of our foolish ministers saying that we need people. I think I don't want to think, but saying that Guyana only has a very small population and we need people. How can we be needing people, and the people that we have, we are not making use of them in the way that we should? We're sending them off. We're treating them, as second-class citizens and all of these things. Who are the people that they really need?
Well, if you really check lands and surveys, the amount of people that were sent off, and these are people with master's degree, people with professional qualification, young people with energy, who could have made a difference for the organization, they were sent off.
Okay.
I could speak for lands and surveyors, and I'm hearing the same in many other organizations. So the fact that we need people and we're sending them off is a contradiction to me. We got to decide when to play politics and when not to as a government, and I don't believe that's happening at the moment. Like I said, my own view is that the government wants a situation where they're in total control so that they can maintain power. And they are adopting that style from maybe past experience. Whatever happened in 2015 doesn't mean that it must happen again, but we have to confront them, and in different ways. We cannot sit down and allow that to continue.
Well, personally, I mean, as a victim of the regime, I noticed that your brothers came out very firmly against what was happening, and they too upheld the nature of the Ben family. I myself interviewed your father when I was writing profiles of villages for David Granger, when he was doing his Emancipation magazine and Guyana Review. So I met your father all the way in Berbice there, and I know that you, apart from your brother who was a GTI, you have Sean who is doing good, your sister is in the education and so on. So the family has a reputation of people who are contributing to the. But how do you feel as a victim now that by this regime? Because they obviously have tried to put a kind of image to Trevor Ben.
Yeah.
How does that?
Deon, the government wants us to pity ourselves and to be afraid of them and to get into a mode where we are, what's the term I'm looking for? But I don't want to get there. They're not going to get under my skin.
Okay.
I was placed under some of the worst conditions in the lockup. At the CID, they locked me under stairs where people walking up. And when people walking up, that's where they get the lockup. Okay. Under the stairs, there's a enclosed area, and they push you under there until they're ready to deal with you.
So all the dust and everything?
All the dust as they walk up the step is coming down on you. So if anybody bring anything for you to eat or drink, whatever is happening when they walk up the step is in your food. So I've dealt with that. You go to the lockup, the first cell that they give to me was overflowing with feces and water. So they can't do anything worse than that. They could try again. I don't care. But the point is, I'm not going to allow them to make me feel less of myself. In fact, the lockup has made me stronger and helped me to focus on the evil that they're bringing on me. But I'm not going to allow it to get to me and to make me angry. And because when you're angry, you don't think straight. I want to be able to continue to serve the people in whatever way they ask me. And if I'm to do that, I have to keep a level head. I can't be focusing on all of the evils that is going on around me. I'm not forgetting it. It's not that I forget it. I keep it at the back of my head. I understand what they're trying to do, and I'm making sure that I don't give them an opportunity to continue like that. But I support initiatives, and especially the political initiatives, that could bring light to what's going on, and we all should be.
What about the support that you've been getting in response to?
No, the support from my family especially is overwhelming. I'm really thankful to my brothers and my sisters and all my cousins who started the protest when I was at the beginning, and that rallied the political people to get on board and so on. And they're always ready, a WhatsApp message away to get involved. So I'm not worried about that. But also, Deon, I have had literally thousands of people contacting me through every medium possible, telling me that they support me, and tell me what you want me to do. I am ready to assist in this way. I'm ready to assist. I have to be holding back people, whether it is on the lands and surveys issues or the credit union issue, because I have touched the lives of many people in the various places that I had an opportunity, whether it's in civil society or whether it's through work. And so people know what to expect from me, and they know what this government is trying to do. So they're not unaware. And so the support is fantastic. I was telling some people the other day, when I ran for the position on the management committee of the credit union, I never set foot out of the credit union. All of the other team members, they went into the regions to campaign, they went all over. I never set foot. But I had the assurance of so many people that if you're running, I'm with you. And so I didn't need to go. I was focused on managing, getting the credit union in shape so that it can deliver on the promises, while the other members went out in the field and campaigned. I did not have to do that. And I can assure you today that if I call, there are a couple of people out there, if I call them out, they're going to be there to support me. So I'm not concerned at all about that. I believe the support base is solid and loyal. But what people understand is that they feel, and I agree with them, that they're being provoked to behave in a certain way to give the government an opportunity to say, I told you so. And to use it in a negative way.
I mean, I told you what?
Black people are bullies, they are this, they are that,
No, but they did that, they tried that before.
Yeah, well, but when you're negotiating, one of the things I did at the UN is negotiate. And sometimes you make progress, or it appears though you're making progress and you're almost at the end. And then something stupid happens and you have to start over. I mean, my approach on the glass half full might not be suitable for this time. I don't know, but that's my training. That's how I operated, whether I was in South Sudan, whether I was in Afghanistan or Sierra Leone. That's how I was made to work with the communities to help them to get through whatever the issues were. Whether it was elections in Afghanistan, or parliamentary difficulties in South Sudan, or whether it was the issues with the plague in what you call it in Sierra Leone. On each occasion, we were made to work with very difficult people. People, in South Sudan, people came up to me and almost spat in my face and wanted to beat me up because I didn't sound like them. I look almost identical, but as soon as I open my mouth, they know I'm not with them.
Okay.
Oh, you was one of them. And they confronted you. So in order to win them over, you have to put up, and maybe that's the part of me that is allowing me to take a little bit more.
To be bullied.
No, I'm not going to be bullied.
Okay.
I'm taking steps, but I'm using calculated steps.
Okay.
I'm using calculated steps. I believe there's a time for everything and there's a room for everyone. And because I take this position doesn't mean that the politicians can't do what they have to do. Or the labor union can't do what they're supposed to do. I hear a big thing about who should be doing what. The labor union saying is the political people saying is the labor union. It's both of them should be acting. So we all have our sphere and space and activities to be responsible for. At this juncture, my role is to build black entrepreneur, to build the public service, and to help the people in the public service, all the people in the public service who are members of the credit union, to become more stable, and I have to work with everybody to make that a reality.
So can we possibly talk next week about the credit union and your
I don't have a job now, Deon. I have all the time in the world.
you got babies and so on that you got to look after.
I do have a 9-year-old who is in school virtually, and I spend a lot of time with her. So yes, during the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you're 53 going 54. You should be a grandfather by now.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I can't afford it.
Okay.
If they could afford it, it's fine, but I can't. Yeah.
All right. But I want to thank you for being here. And I want to tell people out there that, like you said, I mean, you have a position, but we all cannot hold that position. And this fear of being perceived as riotous and rebellious, if we hadn't rebelled and fought, then we would never have gotten our freedom from slavery. And this kind of attempt at a new kind of enslavement is one that we have to rebel against. And if it takes whatever form, at any cost, I am saying that we have to make our presence felt. All right? It can't be as stupid as 2002, 2005. But we have to find ways of making these people understand that it's going too far and it's too rapid. And we're not going to take it. All right? Because they're attacking all of our black leaders. The psychology for me is that once you beat down the leaders, everybody else is going to be feeling, that hopeless and despondent, and that we have no alternative but to give in.
Yeah, that's where they want you.
Right, and we're not going to get to that place. All right, but thanks, Trevor, for being here. We can come back next week and have a talk on the issues surrounding the public service credit union.
Yeah.
All right, to the people out there, it's been a pleasure being with you. So I'll have Trevor back next week, and we'll continue our discourse. See you next week, same time, same channel, for another program of Walter Rodney Groundings. Good night.
Mm.